Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to Family Law Assistance. You may have guessed from the title that today is how I mean to proceed through the week. So I've jumped in today with a live on a biggie. I thought, why not? Let's set the tone for what we're going to be talking about today and the rest of the week. I know that Christmas is nearly upon us. Good God, I can't believe where the time has gone. I can't believe where 2020 has been. And yet, on the eve of December, I thought I know exactly what people are facing right now. We've been doing this for over 14 years, so every Christmas tends to be the same. And I think perhaps even more so with COVID, I think whatever problems that we've seen traditionally before have been amplified, obviously, for this year. So I'm going in and I'm kicking off this week with a biggie but a goodie, because it's something that I know it's broad and the idea is meant to engage discussion. I want to know what your experience of the family court system is. I want to know whether you've been affected by parental alienation, whether if you have been affected by allegations of abuse. And listen, you know, this live is not a new live. I've been doing and talking about these issues for ages, but every now and again I think it's really worthwhile jumping on here and just getting some feedback from you, because look, you know, this is not a place where we're just going to start spouting case law at you and statute, because nobody cares about that. You know, yeah, sure, that might help you fill in some forms, etc., and that might help shape the way that we address a case or not. But in the real world, you living with this stuff, then none of that stuff really matters. In fact, I'm about to do a blog that's called "Family Law is Not About Family Law," because it's not. This stuff happens on the day-to-day. This happens to you. So I remember, God, years ago, I had a client and he was just lovely. He had been separated from his partner and he held quite a prestigious job in the university. And part of his case was that he was not permitted to spend time with his children because of allegations of abuse. Now, as somebody that was quite worn in this field, I knew that every case in family law comes with allegations of abuse. And sometimes I sort of wondered back then whether I became a bit blasé about, well, you know, every case in family law has allegations of abuse. And to be clear, those allegations of abuse can range all the way from, well, he looked at me a bit funny, all the way through to something much more sinister and much more macabre. In this particular case, the client was facing pretty dark allegations of child abuse. Now, you will hear me talk about the fact that there is legislation in place to deal with allegations of abuse. Of course there is, but there's no denying it. This certainly makes for a great delay, can be, depending on the allegations, in a child case. These particular allegations were so severe that they were shocking. And I'm rarely shocked. After 14 years of specialising in family law, of nearly 25 years in working in civil litigation, as a debt collector before even that, I thought I had heard and seen everything. I was wrong. He lost his job. Of course, he didn't spend time with his child. And the net effect is that the longer this went on, and you know, this was pre the days of dealing with practice direction 12J, when there's much more of a timetable implemented. And as time went on, of course, he didn't see his child. And by the time that supervised contact was allowed, well, the child didn't really want to know. Hence came Kafkas, hence came the reports. And lo, in those reports, it had confirmed his worst fears. His child didn't want to know anything about him. His child was, if you know, you know, was alienated. Years went past, the case was closed, and I remember way back when I was sort of brought in nearer the end. Case was closed. and I didn't hear very much from them. Fast forward a few years, and I found that I had a call from him, and it was popped in my diary. And I remember waiting to get that phone call, except I had a phone call that I never thought I'd ever get. Now, have you ever been stopped from seeing your child? Have you ever been accused of abuse? And have you been struggling to be heard in the family court? If the answer is yes to all of that, most of you are sitting at home going, yep, that's totally me. You know, it's no surprise really that suicide in men is 3 times higher than it is in women. Now I'm not here today to sort of analyse those statistics. What I am here is that I certainly know in all of the years of doing this that a marital or a relationship breakup on its own has a real impact on men's mental health. And I say men's because generally speaking, that often they are the non-resident parent. And so generally speaking, often the people that are on the phone to us are either guys or grandparents trying to have some relationship with their children. And I want to be clear, parental alienation doesn't just affect the non-resident parent. Often it's dad, but it's got a ripple effect to other members of the family as well. Now, everyone doesn't want to think of themselves as the bad guy, and parental alienation can be from the subtle to perhaps mimicking what the resident parent is saying, all the way through to the blatant, mummy good, daddy bad. So having to call that out, it's quite a journey. Now, like I said, any kind of marital split, of course, is going to have an impact on men's mental health, but also not seeing their children. Now, I have a funny feeling that most of you who are sitting there nodding, umming and ahhing, will have probably faced allegations of abuse. I entitled this video Access for Justice. We're in a virtual world at the moment. We are in a virtual world, and this, borne by everybody in the system, is hella frustrating. It's hella frustrating simply because you think about most of your communication is non-verbal. Most of the court hearings that are taking place today are teleconference. So the judge, the magistrates, the legal profession misses out on seeing that body language. It misses the huff and the puff, perhaps. It'll miss the eye roll. I noticed that time here, when we're dealing with parental alienation, when we're dealing with mental health, time with children is a currency. And if this is you thinking, Jesus, honestly, it's shit. I know that come Christmas Day, I know the people that are up here reading our blogs at 3 a.m. I know the people that on Christmas Eve, and I used to work Christmas Day just because I knew that so many people would be facing such a lonely and difficult Christmas. COVID, I think, has only added to those problems, and it's certainly in the things that we see and deal with and have been doing for the last 14 years, it's one of the most difficult times of years for lots of particularly non-resident parents. I talked about the title of this live was Access to Justice. You may have been hearing me bang on in previous lives about really being organised about what you're doing. Be organised, have a plan, get help. Now, we at Family Law Assistance have a bajillion blogs, a bajillion lives of me sitting here talking to you like this. We've got our lives, we've got our joint lives with other members of the team, and we've also got our website where there's a whole bunch of stuff. There's loads of blogs, there's really useful information. And what you'll notice very different about the information out there is it's not dry, because you know, somebody, I think it was Cecilia, part of our team, she called it the Ron Burgundy of law. And I had to laugh because it's right. This is not what people should be reading. It's what people want to know. They want to know, how on earth do you parent with a communication book? They want to know, well, how do you solve a case with parental alienation? Spoiler alert, it's difficult. It can be very difficult because most cases don't have the most obvious of alienation. I remember dealing with a case a good few years ago now, and Dad had been accused of pretty much everything under the sun. And we'd gone to a finding of fact trial, and it turned out that the case was found absolutely on every point in Dad's favour. Cecilia, the Ron Burgundy, gets a noble mention. Certainly does. Cecilia, by the way, always comes up with, in every team catch-up we have, in every live that we do together, she always has something that just goes, that's the phrase I want to do. Anyway, but in this finding of fact trial, the case was found in Dad on every level. Mum was turned out to be a liar. She dragged in the head mistress of the posh private school that the child had gone to. So much so that the judge had ordered something fancy called the Section 37, where he was perhaps going to think about putting the child in foster care just so they didn't have the mother as the flea in the ear. This child was so alienated against. It beggared belief. And when things fell down for the other parents spectacularly in the finding of fact trial, we were absolutely left with no uncertain terms that this poor child had to recover himself. And the only way that he was going to do that was a lot of help from a lot of professionals. Having a plan to overturn parental alienation is absolutely a thing. It means you get in the right support. I was very lucky. A good few years ago, I had the privilege of having an audience with the then president of the Family Division of Family Law. And actually, one of the things that he talked about was parental alienation. Now, he wouldn't go so far as to say that parental alienation was a syndrome, but he absolutely acknowledged its existence. Some of the issues that we find, of course, is that when that gets cascaded down to the other courts and to lower courts, that can sometimes be a little bit diluted. Because guess what? Family law is built on a balance of probabilities, which is a kind of woolliness. It's the, well, possibly, maybe. Is it based on a balance of probabilities that this did happen? Which is very different, of course, from criminal proceedings where you're basing something, your burden of proof is something beyond a reasonable doubt. So the bar for of showing something to be true or false, did it happen, didn't it happen, is it this or is it that, the burden of proof is so much higher than it is in family law. So what if you felt in control? What if your mindset was completely changed? What if you had a plan to turn things round? And what if you were in the driving seat? You know, I had the phone call I never thought I'd have. My client, whom I'd been with for years, had sadly taken his own life. The reason I am mentioning it to you today is that I, above anybody else, will know how difficult these times are. I understand how getting access for justice, how parental alienation, how allegations of abuse can really affect a life. I've always likened court to a game. But I know that in reality, the rules that we're playing with in court are not the same as rules reflected in reality. part of our mission really is that we want to help as many people as possible. In fact, you'll notice that apart from seeing my mug and my gorgeous team, but that's why there's loads of lives, there's loads of blogs, there's loads of stuff that when you're Googling stuff at 2, 3 in the morning, and I know that you do, that there's something there that feels real. Something there which you can hang your hat on. Something there that you can plan around. I don't care who you have by your side, be it family law specialists like us, barrister, solicitor, but have somebody who's impartial. Have somebody that's giving you a plan. Most people that come to us are people who feel like family law is happening to them. And we are very much an advocate of turning that round and making sure that you are in the driver's seat. Access to justice? Yeah, probably. But be organised about it and have a plan and surround yourself with the right people. Guys, you'll see more of us this week, and I've got some amazing lives, so talking about things like social media. Oh, the joys of social media. We've been around, guys, for 14 years, so trust me when I say that we really have been there, seen it, and got the court order. DM me if you need any help, or drop some deets down below. This is a safe place for you just to kind of talk and get support from. Guys, have an amazing rest of your day. Take care. Over and out.